My name is Ronaldo Gonzalez, and I lead the CSNP Houston chapter. As a member of CSNP, we are dedicated to promoting cybersecurity education, awareness, and training to be accessible to everyone. By hosting free events for the community, CSNP and myself from the Houston chapter wish to build a supportive, diverse, and inclusive cybersecurity culture and community. If you wish to learn more, please do visit our website at csnp.org and connect with us on various social media platforms. Anyone with an interest in cybersecurity is welcome to join and volunteer for CSNP to become part of something great and important. So I greatly appreciate everyone joining us here in this virtual event. This is an exciting way to connect with others and share this great experience by doing these webinars. A quick note and shout out to our sponsors. We thank you on behalf of CSNP to GuardiaCore, Security Innovation, Elastic, and Contrast Security. Now, don't miss also our upcoming webinars. We have on April 27th, a Texas Hack the Box event. On May 5th, we have Introduction to Data Protection by Carolina Schaffer. And also on May 13th, we have A Day in the Life of a CISO with Randall Fritzsche. If you're interested in the events, please feel free to refer to these links and our website for any further information on these events and on other events. So now today's interesting topic is called Ethical Hacking Test Taking 101 with our guest speaker, Dr. Byron K. Wallace. This webinar will discuss some of the available resources that will assist test takers to help pass the ethical hacker exam. Dr. Byron K. Wallace is a cybersecurity professor at Lone Star College, the Cypher campus, originally from Louisiana, but lives in Houston. He presently works as a system admin for a chemical and manufacturing company where his main focus is to evaluate and lead his team in efforts deemed necessary to test networks for vulnerabilities within his organization. Now, Dr. Byron K. Wallace has obtained his Bachelor of Science degree in Electronics Engineering Technology from the Grambling State University, holds 2 master's degrees, a Master of Science degree in Information Systems Management from the University of Phoenix, and a Master of Science in Cybersecurity Technology from the University of Maryland, and his doctoral degree of Management and Organizational Leadership with a specialization in Information Systems Technology, also from the University of
Uh-oh. Let me go back and do it again. We only did this like 3 times, right?
Yep. It's probably the other screen or the other window.
Okay, let's see, application.
While we're waiting, everyone, feel free to check out the links in the chat. And I linked it up to the events that we're hosting in the near future. So we'll have our April 27th Hack the Box event happening next week, our May 5th event, as well as our May 13th event. So check it out if you're curious. And the best part is that they're all free. So anyways, awesome. Back to you, Byron.
Can you see it now?
Yep, we're good.
Okay, so self-preparatory guide to certified ethical hacking, a step-by-step guide. These is not written in stone, it's just a general idea of what works for most people, but everybody is going to be their own individual and have their own little, idiosyncrasies to get through the exam. But this is just general information and knowledge. So the table of contents, we're going to talk about ethical hacking and introduction, the history of ethical hacking, why CEH, prerequisite for certification, eligibility requirements, the exam, top benefits of certification, and a study plan. So to be a hacker, you need to think like one. That came from the EC Council. Certified ethical hacker, also known as white hat hackers, is one of the most popular and sought after professional certifications provided by the reputed International Council of E-Commerce Consultants. Network security has always been an important concern since internet came into existence. Whereas traditional hackers or bad guys exploit networks for malicious or evil reasons, ethical hackers work like good guys and protect computer systems from dangerous intrusions. A certified ethical hacker is a skilled professional who checks out the vulnerabilities and ethical penetrates the network just like an illegal hacker does, while protecting the network from possible threats coming from the outside. History of ethical hacking. Ethical hacking dates to ancient India, where people played a strategy game called Shantaruganga. Like chess in 1889, the US Navy adopted war games as one of the training tools. During the 1960s, the first hacking was reported at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. In 1974, the US Air Force conducted its first ethical hack to evaluate the security concerns of their operating systems. The first issue of Frax and eZine was published by and for hackers in 1985. The Computer Fraud and Abuse Act came into existence in 1986. John Patrick of IBM coined the term ethical hacking in 1995. With the widespread use of the internet in the 90s, hackers multiplied. Today, most of the organizations are spending a lot on penetration testing in order to safeguard their systems from adversaries. Trainings are being offered for the same. So EC Council's latest Certified Ethical Hacker version 9 version is a complete and elaborate ethical hacking and information system. Security auditing program emphasizes on latest security threats, advanced attacks, vendors, and practical real-life applications of the latest hacking techniques, methodologies, tools, techniques, and security measures. Most of IT companies have already made a CEA certification a must qualifications for security-related posts, making it a go-to certifications for security professionals. Who should take the CEA certification? Security officers, auditors, security practitioners, site administrators, and webmasters. That is why CEH is needed. The prerequisite for the certification: it is advisable to refresh on some industry-related knowledge in order to have a comfortable exam experience. Know the basics of information security, concepts such as CIA. Understand the basics of networking, strong knowledge of TCP/IP. Know the basics of cryptography. Know how to use a Windows PC. Well, if you don't know how to use a Windows PC, you shouldn't be a hacker in the first place. Eligibility requirements. To take up the CEH exam, a candidate must have enrolled for a CEH course at an EC Council Accredited Training Center. ATC are prepared through self-study. Official training. The candidate must attend an official instructor-led training, computer-based training, or CBT online live training or academic learning. In case a candidate wishes to take up the CE exam without official training, he or she must possess educational qualifications that reflect specialized information security, minimum 2 years of related experience in the field of information security. You are required to deposit a non-refundable eligible application fee of $100. Complete and submit the exam eligibility application form. Buy an official exam voucher from ecouncil.org. The self-study track, in case a candidate wishes to take up the exam without official training, he or she must possess educational qualifications that reflect specialization in information security. Minimum 2 years of related experience in the field of information security. You are required to deposit a non-refundable eligibility application fee of $100. Complete and submit the exam eligibility application form and buy an exam voucher. So the test itself consists of 125 questions. The exam format is multiple choice questions. The duration is 4 hours. You need a 70% passing score. The exam fee is around $500, give or take. The test delivery will be web-based via a parametric prime or person view testing center. The CA exam code varies at different testing centers for both web-based and Parson View testing centers. Both exams are identical in origin and lead to CA certification. You need to answer questions related to security, hacking tools, and techniques, and will be required to decipher exploit codes, study log files, and infer output. It is suggested to take as many practice tests as one can in order to be prepared for the exam. The top benefits of certified ethical hacker certifications: Though a newcomer to IT industry tends to be a hot pick for those who wish to pursue a career in penetration testing. Before the evolution of CEH, there was no certification dedicated to bring out the dark side of IT security. This certification covers all aspects of IT security, from tools of the trade to ethics. The ability to beat the hacker at their own game, knowledge of the risks and vulnerabilities of the security system, enhanced career opportunities, knowledge of the tools and techniques of the trade, achieve a unique and respectable title. So, study plan. The approximate amount of preparation time required for the CEH exam varies from person to person. It is estimated that a refresher requires around 3 to 4 months of preparation, while an experienced person can take up the exam after 1 month of dedicated preparation. The best way to deal with this dilemma is to take up a CEH mock test and checks one exam readiness. So, the study plan, step 1 is required to have a working knowledge of Windows, Linux, networking, Linux Plus, and Server Plus. Candidates should understand the basic virtualization concepts, as most data centers are hosted on virtual environments, and no one will allow real-life projects to get hacked. Entire practice sessions take place in a controlled environment. It is advisable to do some online. Research on Windows CLI cheat sheet, Linux CLI cheat sheet, and basic commands of networking. Step 2, while doing self-study, it is very important to choose the right study material, like All-in-One, Exam Guides by Matt Walker. This is an excellent book, and it comes with an extensive master exam. It helps you in understanding the CEH syllabus. Step 3, try out taking sample practice tests and make a note of your weak areas. Keep a check on time. Spillman CEH Simple Learner CEH free practice test is carefully designed to match the preparation needs and make your exam ready. Step 4, play a lot with security and penetration tools. Learn TCP dump, Wireshark, Nmap, Netcat, Snort, etc. Understand how to capture packets and how to extract information out of them. You must be clear on various scan types and various flags, including their binary and hexadecimal representation. Read various blogs and ebooks available on the internet, watching related videos on YouTube. SecurityTube can help you a lot by giving you step-by-step guidance. Step 5, when you are done with your preparation, try taking up practice tests vigorously. Take up the CEH exam once you are confident enough to clear it in one go. And that was just the short and sweet of it. So we'll take questions and so forth, Ronaldo, if you're ready.
All right, there we go. There's my unmute button. All right, so let's see. All right, so we got a couple questions here. All right, so one question is, someone's asking about what is the difference between ethical hacking or an ethical hacker and a pen tester or pen testing?
It's basically no difference. Ethical hacking is just the industry term that was given, but some people likes the word pen testing, but it's a broad area because you can be both or you could be not both.
Okay. All right. And another question is, what if you don't have 2 years experience in IT security? What's the approach for that?
I really can't answer that question. That was some information on the EC Council website. They do have a process that you can bypass to get to take the test exam, but it's on their website, and contact them for that additional information.
All right. So Byron, so similar to that question, something I was taking down some notes here that I wanted to also ask you about, but like, let's say, for example, so someone that's trying to do pen testing or get some gain experience, if they don't have the IT experience, what are ways to build that?
Well, to be a pen tester, number one, you have to be very good with programming code, like Python and Perl and stuff of that nature, because those are the type of scripts that pen tester uses when they're doing pen testing within an organization. So, and a lot of scripts are given, already developed, but in some cases you got to modify those scripts to make you own for the situation you're in. So what I would do, I would try to find as much information to judge my skills, because everybody's not a programmer. So if you want to get into the hacking side of it and you're not a programmer, then you would have to partner with someone who's a pen tester, and then you become what they call a vulnerability assessor. So you just does the front end of the work and identify the systems that that seems vulnerable and that you want to test, and then you give the pen tester to actually test those systems.
Okay. So also, let's see, would you say that, so like, for example, so you mentioned Python. Why Python? There's several different programming languages to use. What makes Python the preferred choice or better in the pen testing world versus like C++, Java, or other languages?
Because 90% of the tools for pen testing runs on a Linux platform on Mac. And so Python and Perl are the applications that's more Mac and Linux friendly.
Yes, so it's easier to build your code and test it, right, with Python.
Right. You 90%, like a large majority of your tools will not run on a Windows PC at all.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So let's say also, like, from another perspective, you have a lot of people who are maybe coming into this world of cybersecurity, or they have an interest and they're not sure where they want to go, but they hear a lot about hacking and pen testing and ethical hackers. So they start taking courses. They start at community colleges, trying to get experience, but they don't have, say, the work experience. What would you say to say a way to build that on your profile to show, hey, look, I may not have the work experience, but I have other experience in other ways. What do you think is something they can use on the resume, say from things that they learned in the course, whether it's related to labs or a project? Can that be useful to put into something on a resume and as a way to show, hey, I got experience doing this, testing this environment, or something related to that?
I have had students who just went volunteer with companies and just to tag along for the experience. So like, for example, they had a third-party company who goes around and do penetration testing and vulnerability assessment for banks. And a couple of students, they're like, man, I'll go and just hang out with you for free, just so I can learn. And a lot of companies will let you do that if it's not, confidential type information. And that'd be a great resume builder right now.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And that usually has a very good success rate, maybe being hired for that company or being recommended even to another company. Would you agree?
Right. Yeah. Oh yeah, definitely. Because they get a firsthand view of your work ethic. And then also by what it does is it tells them that I'm dedicated to what my field of study, and I want to be proficient in it because I'm volunteering my time for free.
Yeah. Okay. All right. And there's another question here from the audience. What is typically the passing rate for a first timer that takes the exam?
I do not have those statistics at all.
Yeah, I guess it varies, right? Depending on what you study or how much you study in the practice. So, because everybody's different, right? Some people may pass on the first try, some might take second try, third try. So, I think it varies. All right. Another question here. Are there any free resources or study guides, labs to help prepare for the CH that you recommend that are very good resources to use online or books? Right. Anything from that perspective?
Right. Yes, there's a number of mock testing type simulators out there. You just have to Google it and see. But I mean, it has, tons of just, test taking sites, and what it does is it gives you a simulation like you actually in the class setting for the test, and it just throws various questions like, like for on the Microsoft side, they use transcender type scenarios. So there's the same type of those for ethical hacking also.
Okay. So also, let's say, well, now with the way the pandemic has hit us, since early last year, and the way a lot of events have gone virtual, if we can't shadow someone, either volunteering, either someone at work or goes even within, say, a separate company to do that, whether it's free or volunteer, what would be another good way to try to get some of that shadow experience?
Um, well, I mean, university, like say Lone Star, Lone Star partners with companies that give students experience of that nature. I mean, then it's like you can self study and try to, resources, all those resources on your own too. But, work experience, you have to just get into the work environment arena and just partner with somebody.
Okay. All right. And someone's asking also if you're able to bring any study material to the exam. Not, not that I know if I have, when I took it, I didn't take any material, but any other insights you can give to preparing for the exam? Because I know you can't have anything with you, but what are other good ways to cram information?
They'll give you pencil and paper. And so what I would do with that pencil and paper, the first thing I do as soon as I sat down is that I would jot down the things that I'm not too, versed in. I temporarily memorize them before I walk in the exam. Say, hypothetically speaking, you don't know what CIA means. So I'll get in the car and get that in my mind. As soon as I walk down, I write on a piece of paper the definition of CIA. That way, I have it written there, already. Whatever concepts that you're not 100% comfortable with, and you just write as many notes based on them concepts as soon as you sit down before you even start taking the test.
Yeah. Okay. What would you say to someone if someone's looking for like a cyber mentor? What are the ways to approach that, and how would someone wanting to shadow that person, whether say virtually or like you mentioned, volunteer in that way, but finding that mentor, how would someone approach that? What's the best way, some tips you can go to give someone to find that kind of person for them?
Just networking. I mean, the social media aspects of it, and those type of things. I mean, that's what we use in today's world. That's where we at. So I would say just reach out, and somebody. But you have to be very careful because a lot of people might respond back to you, and some people might be very versed in the field, and some people might pretend to be very versed in the field and really not that versed. So that's a area you're gonna have to really do some research on that person and dig down and see, who's real and who's not.
Okay. The prestige that comes with the CEH exam. Yeah, you take your exam, you pass, you get certified for certified ethical hacker. Oh wait, my internet is saying it's unstable. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, you had froze for a minute, but you're back now.
All right, I'm back. All right. So what I was saying was, so someone has the certification, they pass it. Compared to other industry certifications, how would you compare someone having this certification versus other certifications related to a different kind of cybersecurity certification? What are like pros and cons to having one versus the other, or how does it relate and compare to other industry certifications?
Well, that's a tricky question because that have to be organization specific. Every organization require you to have a certain type of certification to get into. I mean, as an industry as a whole, in my opinion, any type of cybersecurity IT certification you get is always a plus on your belt. I mean, it just kind of separates you from the rest of the crowd that doesn't have it. But as for moving to this company or moving to a certain role, then that's company specific.
Yeah, yeah, I can see that. Especially when you have, say, a certification, it's one layer of filter that you may get past when you submit your resume, for example, to a company. They might get a lot of resumes from one website, I don't know, let's say Indeed or some other recruiting offices, and they usually filter out these applications, say who has these kinds of credentials that we're looking for. So looking for someone that has CEH, that has these number of experience or whatever it is. So I would say, having this certification, first of all, it helps you at least pass a few layers of this filtering process to get to that interview point, because the big job is get that first interview. And then from there, it's just a matter of being able to sell yourself and show that, you went through this program or you studied this, you got certified, you have some experience here in the classroom, at work, volunteering. So these are all ways, but having that is a good way to get that notice, people can
And,
see.
and also on the flip side of that is, not playing devil advocate, but some organizations look at it as a certification doesn't mean nothing to me because anybody can read a book and pass a test.
Right.
I need someone who knows how to do the work, so it's a balancing act, you got the good and the bad on both sides.
Yeah. Yeah. And that goes also with anything you put on your resume, it's fair game. So if you put that, yeah, I have the CEH or you had this experience doing this in the lab, then if you put it in there, make sure it's something that you can talk about, that it's something that you have some exposure to. And it's okay to say, hey, I'm not an expert, I'm not fully immersed in this area, but here's what I know, here's what I've learned, and here's what I've done and how I can help the organization. All right, so another question here is, for an IT person with software development background, what would be the best way or path to get into the cybersecurity field?
If you got a software development background, penetration testing is the route to go. Because again, that's back to penetration or borderline programmers. They have to be able to adjust on the fly and keep going, like I say, with the different applications. So I would definitely say penetration testing.
Also, I would like to add to that, by having that background in the applications, you would know the way the application itself is built. So either the protocols that are built around it or the architecture itself, the way it's communicating to other components. So when you do pen testing and you learn about SQL injection or you learn about cross-site scripting, and if you build out the site and how it's supposed to function with the returns or input validation, then it's actually having a background is a good transition because you know how it's built on the backside. And now when you start attacking that from the external side, then you can probably spot those issues quicker and know what to target, because if you build it yourself, you might know things that are probably weak in it or things that you miss. So it's a way of bridging two sides that can really complement to very well in cybersecurity. So yeah, I agree. I think the pen testing is a good route to take into that. All right, another question is, so earlier you mentioned that to get certified ethical hacker, you have to think like a hacker. So EC Council, made that statement. But what is the way we can train ourselves? Like, how do we become, or how do we think like an ethical hacker? How do we get to that point? What's different from that versus someone who's not normally exposed to that field of cyber?
You got it. Well, I call it think outside the box. Break away from the norms. Break away from the givens. Question everything. It's like, okay, why is this? How can this be broken? Or how can this be manipulated? Social engineering. Watching, looking over people's shoulders, and just, when I first started in this, I used to sit down and do a lot of people watching. I would go down for lunch, during break, and sit down and talk to people, and you'd be amazed how much information you get from talking to people that you didn't even ping and ask for, and you can have their whole access to their whole life story, or even a company life story. Like one day I was sitting down talking to a man, and he was upset because they changed the email system. So I just asked him questions, and then I knew the name of the email type they was using in the organization, and what was the email format for users, and the whole 9 yards, just by having a 20-minute conversation.
All right. So yeah, so thinking out, so really that curiosity you want to have, think outside the box. So, I kind of, when I was preparing myself for the CH exam and just general playing with my own virtual lab, I always kind of tell myself, try to think like a bad person, or it's hard to define because you can't really say how someone is bad, but try to think of how you can break into it, and the ways around it. So, and I can see where for some people it might be difficult, because if you always try to do things, a certain way, or they're always trying to be right, and just, which many people are like that. I'm like that myself too. It can be maybe a hard area to break into because you're not used to that. Your mind's not used to that. So thinking out of the box is maybe look at some examples, see how other people do it, and then use that as a basis to understand, okay, they did this way, what can I try differently, or how can I try this from a different perspective? So that curiosity and just trying to figure it out in that sense. So, that would be some other ways to try to think like a hacker in that sense.
And then on the flip side of that, if you want to protect yourself, just don't trust no one. Trust no one and question everything.
Yeah, that's like the zero trust model, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Trust no one and question everything.
All right, so this is another question here. So what are some good strategies for test anxiety? So someone's preparing for the exam, they have this anxiety. How would you try to approach that from a studying perspective if you had the anxiety to take this? So some tips, recommendations on how to approach that.
First of all, work at your own pace. Take your time. Don't set unrealistic goals. If you want to take the test in 6 months and you struggle from anxiety, make it 8 months, 9 months. Don't put that added pressure and stress on you, and work at your own pace. The way you eat an elephant is one piece at a time. So you just take one little section at a time and keep building off of that one section and keep going, building and building and building. The next thing you know, you're there.
All right. Yeah, and that's actually very true. Very good advice. Is pace yourself. You want to be able to take your time studying for it, and when you feel you're ready, then you sign up and take the exam. Now, there's also another question. Some people are asking about when they've kind of looked into the certification process. There's the CEH exam that has the I guess the question exam, and then there's another part to it that involves a lab. Can you maybe clarify like what that is about, or what's different from one or the other? How getting both makes a big difference?
Not. I'm not familiar with the lab side at all. That must be something they recently added, lately, because that's my first hearing that question.
Okay. All right. Now, let's say so the question here is, so compared to the CEH, would you also recommend the Security Plus certification for beginners? So the CompTIA, or even some of the Cisco cybersecurity certifications?
Right. Security Plus side, yeah. I mean, the Security Plus test for beginners is a great exam. It's more of a knowledge awareness type. It's not highly technical, but it's in other words, they ask you questions to the effect that if you got a fence around a data center, what is the ideal height of the fence? Or if you have a building with 18 floors, what is the ideal floor to put the data center on? Those type of questions. They're not overly technical, but it's a good step into the door type scenario.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So would you say that it's could the CH exam alone be sufficient, or is it important to also have this certification with other certifications?
It depends on what you want to do. It depends on what you're trying to accomplish. I used to work before being employed. I worked at Chevron for 25 years, and the IT industry in Chevron was a closed type environment. So my philosophy was, I'm gonna acquire and get enough IT certifications until they don't have no choice but to let me in the door. And that's what I did. But that was based on the situation I was in. But these days, everybody's situation is totally different. So I wouldn't say one is better than the other. It's just based on where you're trying to go and what you're trying to accomplish.
Okay. All right. So like this, we're getting a lot of good questions. Another question is, if once you go into the route for pen testing, what's it like those first few weeks when you work as a pen tester? How is that? I'm sure it's different for many people, but in general, how would you describe that for someone that goes that route?
So back when I was at Chevron, I had a team, and we did pen testing and vulnerability assessment of the process control network. Process control networks are networks within organizations where all your production equipment run on. It's air gap systems away from everything else. And so it was leading up to the actual pen testing and the vulnerability assessment was a lot of upfront work, because you had meetings and you had drawings, and you sit down and look at those drawings, and you have to identify the systems that you thought was vulnerable and you want to test. So that's, you know, I mean, that's many, many weeks before you actually get to the site and start doing the work. So by the time you get to the site, you have a great idea of what you're going to do. You have IP addresses, subnets, and all that information already in hand before you start. Now, keep in mind, no one is going to let you pen test a live system. No one is going to cure the downtime that is associated with that. So what we did was we used a Kronos backups, and we took backups of all the systems that we wanted to actually beat on per se. And we went back to our virtual lab and we recreated those people's network in our virtual lab where we can beat on everything and use all the tools available without worrying about downtime. Now, on site, what we did when we was on site, we didn't do full-fledged pen testing. We just ran certain types of tools to, you know, to determine if of all the machines at patch level, you know, what patch level they correctly patched, or were they these vulnerable patches from different the site. I can't call a name, but there's a site right now that tells all the vulnerabilities, and you know, we compare it to those. That's what we did on site. But the real work came back when you returned in the virtual lab. That's where you was able to use all your password cracking tools and everything else to see where the weaknesses were.
Okay. All right. Now, another question here is, would you have any comment or maybe some insight? So let's say someone that works in the cyber field in the finance brokerage industry, in a general sense, any types of vulnerabilities that come to mind, or just something to gotchas to be aware of for people in the finance area?
Well, finance-wise, I think back in the day, they came a long way, because you remember back in the day, finance and banking was the model that everybody wanted to follow. So they've been hardening and tightening up for a long time, but they do have one thing called cross-scripting, where you think you're on one type of web page, but something is happening in the background, which is how people, you know, actually dealing with web applications, web banking, online banking type scenarios. So, but I mean, what the trend happened now, what tends to happen is that because people have been hacking regular systems for so long, and these people, we've been standing up there and hardening those systems and putting up defenses on those systems. They started focusing now on process control systems, because process control systems wasn't on the same level as banking and finance and all these other type of systems. They've been lagging behind, because when you build a process control system, you build those systems to last 25 plus years. You don't change out the equipment like you do on the front side. So those old equipment, they can't be hardened like the equipment on the, that's front facing. When I call front facing, that's one very easily accessed from the internet.
Okay. All right, another question here. So someone's asking, so a moment ago, we talked about, mentioned, we don't want to trust anyone, question everything. So there's a question about, are the people in the cybersecurity field, are we considered to be very paranoid? What would you say for a comment about that? How would you describe it in general?
Paranoia when it comes to cybersecurity is good. Yes,
yep.
Be paranoid. Believe it or not, my favorite movie is Mr. Robot.
Yeah, Mr. Robot's good.
He's a paranoid, half drug addict, half genius, half antisocial. I mean, all the above. But if you look at it, he's excellent at what he do. Yeah. So paranoia is good.
Yeah, and just to add to that, so it's because of the curiosity too, and paranoia, but also it's also a balance too, because when we think about, if we're, let's say, from personal perspective, like my own personal home, my own personal privacy, yeah, I'm gonna be more paranoid. So I would agree that I tend to be paranoid because I want to protect my private data and my family, my kids, relatives, whoever it is. So try to help them, give them tips. At work, though, in the industry, it is good to be paranoid. It is good to question everything. But then there's also a balance, because you have to be able to enable the business to do what it needs and be successful and do what they're supposed to do, but also providing that security level. So there's also, it is paranoia, but it's also a balance too, because there you have to find compromise in ways that's possible, but still secures the environment. So you gotta have that security mindset from the beginning of that whole process from end to end. So, all right, another question here. So let's say someone that takes the exam, they pass it, over the course of a few months. Are they required to do any kind of continuing education requirements, or is it just a one-time test? Like, how do you maintain the certification?
To my knowledge, it's a one-time test. I'm not aware of no continuing education qualifications.
What I would add to that, something from my experience, because I passed mine in last year in January 2020, and I remember just recently I had to. Now there's a membership. I think that's probably what I'm thinking about. There's a membership that you sign up for with EC Council. So I know there's a yearly membership you have to maintain. I guess if you want to maintain that way, I'm not sure if it's for that, but I would say that's probably the only thing I can recall as some kind of maintenance, having that certification with EC Council. So maybe that's it, but I'm not sure. I haven't heard of any other continuing education credits that you have to maintain. If it isn't, I might have missed it already, but it's good to know, for that. Let's see, and then do you know if the exam also covers areas related to ICS and SCADA systems?
No.
No. All right. What would you say? Now, there's also, from some of the course content, or in general, the content of this exam, it's also very tool heavy. There's a lot of tools and programs and names of different types of tools that are out there. So how does someone remember or study these tools when there's so many to go through for the exam?
Well, first of all, me personally, just focus on the popular ones. Nmap, your password cracking tool, Cain and Abel, Snort, those type. The ones that's popular. You focus on those and master those, and the probability of the ones that's not popular being on the test versus the ones that's popular, you just have to weigh the options out. But I would really focus on the ones that's the most popular and try to, the Wiresharks, the Nmaps, the Snort, those type of names.
What about like even tools like outside of the tools that are covered by the exam, but there's tools like the Wi-Fi pineapple from Hack5. Hack5, they have many different hacker tools or hacker gadgets, I guess you call it, rubber ducky, something related to a screen recorder, and the Wi-Fi pineapple. So these other tools, how would you? What would your comment be for these as you prepare for the exam? I mean, these are all pen tester gadgets, right?
But back to my previous comment, I mean, the exam is going to cover the most popular, the ones that's mostly popular in the industry. So that's the ones I would focus on. Those other ones are great tools to learn from a personal perspective, but I don't think that's something you spend a whole bunch of time on for preparing for the exam.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right, and then see another question here. So for someone that works in the healthcare industry, would the CH exam be a good route, or would you suggest another type of certification to prepare for?
That goes back to your employer, because healthcare IT is different from all the rest of the general IT standards, and they play by a different set of rules. So I would, that'd be something that's back to the employee, someone in your organization. You'd have to just contact, like maybe an IT manager or IT director, and just ask that question to them.
Yeah. Yeah. To add to that, I would also say that, the skills that you will learn in pen testing will be good to know anyways for the healthcare, because if you do work in that industry, if you know how you're vulnerable and you know the ways to do it, then like what Byron was saying is talk to the management there, to the IT, and see, hey, we should do this differently or do this better, and have that kind of conversation. Because one thing that I remember is that when we deal with data and we hear about these data breaches, there is, PII data that's gets stolen. There's PHI data or personal health information that gets stolen. these data breaches, it can happen to any kind of industry. So now when there's a data breach involving the healthcare side, the PHI data tends to be more valuable to attackers or hackers, because in the black market, in the dark web, they are worth more. You can sell it for more because you get more out of it. Whereas with PI data, like credit card information, if someone gets your credit card, you can cancel it, and your credit card companies typically reimburse you, and there is a process to address that. But with healthcare data, there is no process for that. It's not that easy. So it becomes much more valuable in the dark web. So if you're in the healthcare industry, that's something I think it's important to know how these things work. And if it's something that you're able to help the organization with, then that will be a good area to improve on that kind of business. And then I see another question here. So if there was something that you wish you would have gone back to learn more about it, more in depth when you were in school in cybersecurity, what would you say would that be, or what would you predict to be those changes that would occur, with new kinds of technologies that come in, or like malware? If you were to go back and have that kind of perspective, what would you say, or how would you prepare for this, the way those trends would change?
It's hard to predict and prepare for trends.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just, one of the things, to answer that question, one of the things, you just have to be very easy to adapt to changing environments. And you have to be able to move and think on the fly and be very analytical quick. So to say you go back and change something different based on what we see now, but back then we wasn't seeing what we see now. So, it was just having the willingness to change and accept accept where we at, and just, make the best of it.
Yeah. Okay. Now there's still a few more questions. So before I ask the other one, I want to mention to the audience, there is a poll I just launched right now. So if for those of you that are still here, please feel free to fill out the poll, and then while we're doing that, we can still ask some additional questions. But I want to give a chance for the audience to access the poll and be able to answer those questions. So we're taking this for our visibility into this webinar, and also to help us with future events. All right, so now let's see, there's another question here. Let's see, so also earlier you mentioned from some of the languages, so we talked about Python, and there's also mention of Perl. How much is Perl used compared to Python in cybersecurity? Would you say it's because it's scripting and similar to what Python is Perl also a good language to really grasp as part of the path to learning with cybersecurity?
It's based on the person. A person might feel more comfortable using Perl than they do Python to do the scripting. Is their choice. It's not a go-to type language that this must be done in. It's just based on how you're familiar with either one of them. But if you learn either one of them, that's a plus on your side. If you learn both of them, that's even better.
Okay. All right, and it looks like I think someone in the audience raised their hand. I believe they may want to ask a question. So I'm going to allow Peter Lin I'm going to turn on your unmute so you can go ahead and speak. Give me 1 second. Okay. All right, Peter, go ahead.
Thank you for sharing your knowledge with us. I already asked my question, so thank you.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, Peter. All right, let's see. So there's another question here. So when it comes to learning about mobile security or some kind of, or combined security, such as other types of components and environment, whether it's related to radio, like you mentioned, the SCADA is not including the CH, but what is the process when you're trying to learn about the security aspect of a technology, whether it's mobile or computers or the radio or some areas. Like, how do you approach figuring that out? Well, what do you do to learn that?
Well, my approach is before I can determine what is safe and what is secure, I have to understand how it works. Like, for example, an app on your phone. If you got an app on your phone that integrates with the thermostat in your house, well, you know that the middleman in that is a cloud server somewhere. The thermostat talks to the cloud server, and the cloud server talks to your phone and back and forth like that. So once you understand that process of the data flow, which then you can understand all the other pieces around it. But I guess to answer the question, the most important part is understanding data flow.
All right. So another question here from someone, they're asking, so for someone that gets a certification in the CEH, have they gone through pen testing? What value does it bring to that person in the sense of like, what's the typical range of salary that someone might expect for having this kind of experience in pen testing or the CH exam? Do you have any insight or something you can help with how that would work for someone gaining experience or having experience?
I've seen pen testers salaries go all over the place. Like, for example, the company that we used when I was doing was Lockheed Martin. Those people was getting paid somewhere in like between $55 and $72 an hour. So so it just depends on the organization you're working for, and what's, and the need, the demand. It's all about supply and demand,
Okay. Would you say there's a lot of, is there a good number of entry-level jobs that people could find related to pen testing?
Entry level, it's gonna be hard. You know what I'm saying? Because pen testing, what defines your credibility is work experience and your track record. It's kind of like a project manager. What defines a good project manager is the number of projects that he has managed. But entry level, it's gonna be difficult. But there is jobs. What tends to happen is you get a job with a security company doing, say, maybe threat analysis, and then you graduate up to being a pen tester for that organization. Or you get a job in the SOC, working in the SOC or some of that nature, then you graduate up to that next level. But unless you just a dynamic computer programmer and dynamic programmer and script writer, and you prove your self-worth on the entry level, then you have your foot in the door. If that's what that company is actually looking for, is somebody to write scripts.
Okay. Awesome. Okay. Another question here is what would it take for someone with an IT background to fully transition into the cybersecurity field?
Desire and want. I mean, it's not a chosen path. It's, because the cybersecurity field is many faces of it. It's many, different directions. You could be, like I say, you could be a penetration tester, and you can be a vulnerability assessor. You could be someone who works with the organization to remediate vulnerabilities that's found. So it's just to find your niche and to find the field that you want to be in, and focus on that and being the best you can be in that area.
Right. Okay, and I think we have time for one more question. Looks like someone from the audience, raise their hand. Sam. All right, let me. Here we go. I'm gonna enable you to go to speak. All right, go ahead, Sam.
Hi, thank you for your great session. Actually, I have IT background, and also I'm a technical project manager. So I'm really interested to get into cybersecurity. I have done some cybersecurity work as a software developer, like SQL injection, writing like an enterprise application which is secure. So I have worked on those areas too. But I'm a little, and I enjoy everything, but I'm a little bit lost, among all this certification and which direction to go.
So let me ask you this question. Since you're a project manager, and you like cybersecurity, why not be a cybersecurity project manager?
That would be great. So what kind of certification should I pursue?
Well, do you have your project management certificate?
Yes, I do. I have all those, my PMP.
So you have 90% of the requirements met already. So basically, you just need to find an organization who will let you function in the role of being a cybersecurity project manager. Because based on the cybersecurity side of it, or once you understand the terminology and the functions, then it's just like any other project management you have done in the past, especially since you already have the IT background of being an IT project manager.
Yeah, I had an interview actually with a very well-known company, and they asked me all these technical cybersecurity questions. For example, if someone gives you a penetration result, test result, so how would you approach, how do you prioritize, these kind of things. So
Right. The way that comes with, again, that's kind of catch-22, because that comes with experience. But to answer that question, the way you prioritize it based on when they give you the penetration testing results, they're going to categorize it in what is more serious versus less serious. So you address what is more serious first.
Right. So then I decided to go for like a certification or brush up my skill set, those kind of things.
What I would do from the certification, I wouldn't worry about the certification right now. I would worry about the skill set out and understanding the terminology and the methodologies that's involved in, and understanding and getting the right framework thought process going. Because by you having a project management certification, whether you're managing IT projects or cybersecurity projects or penetration testing projects or vulnerability projects, the basic of the project is still the same. You just got to get familiar with the terminology and the methodologies that's used.
Right.
All right. All right. I think we have time. Thank you, Sam. I think we have time for one more question. Byron, would you be okay for one more question?
Sure.
Yep. All right. Let's see. So, like, I see someone here, SK, with the hand up. So, let me go ahead and unmute SK. Okay, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. Hi, Byron. Thank you so much for your, taking this question and all that. So I'm just about to finish my master's in system security, and I'm a poor student, if you know what I mean. And one of my previous, my previous colleague, he graduated 2 years ago. He was struggling to find a job in cybersecurity for a long time. Finally, he's got one job, and it's so even after doing a master's or whatever, it's kind of not easy. So I want to ask you a question about, obviously, we talked about certification and all that. That's one area that you focus on, right? What else can you do? And I've got a slightly different question, which is of a technical nature, if you don't mind me asking that as well.
Okay. Let me ask you the first question. Let me ask you the first question.
Sure.
Okay. This is the problem with cybersecurity employment. If you look at the job scope, everybody wants you to have 5 to 10 years experience in cybersecurity. Well, that's the problem. Cybersecurity ain't been around 5 to 10 years. So the educational side has not caught up with the demand yet. You know what I'm saying? So that's where the gap lies. And but as time passes, that gap gets smaller and smaller, but there's still a gap. So what I would do, like I said previous, I would find an organization and take a job just to get my foot in the door. And then it's easy to move around within an organization once you're already in that organization, instead on the outside looking in. It might not be what you want to be. Like personally myself, I did a job I totally hated for 8 years because I was getting my foot in the door and I needed a paycheck. But I despised that job. I totally did for 8 years. I did that job until I finally was able to get what I wanted to get after being there 8 years. So, I mean, sometimes you got to take a sideways step or a back step to get what you want, and just keep focused on the bigger goal and don't quit. Don't give up. Keep pushing ahead.
Right. Thank you for that. And my the bit of technical question that I wanted to ask you is, could you talk a bit about, I mean, obviously, as part of our course, we kind of go through, and I'm always checking the news, what is coming up in cybersecurity, whatever, right? So could you talk about this, like the state-sponsored attacks, for example, such as Ukraine power grid attack, or recently, the Indian power grid or the atomic agency or satellite attack by China? Or is this more about signals intelligence, or is there a reconnaissance, or is this they develop those zero-day tools, or they use existing tools? And how do defenders deal with it? What is their perspective?
I'm not familiar with those attacks, but I can tell you one of the greatest books ever written is Countdown to Zero Day.
Sorry, what is it called again, please?
Countdown to Zero Day. It talks about the Stuxnet virus and what all went into that through the whole 7 years it took them to develop that one virus. I think the lady name who wrote the book is Kimberly Zeller, if I'm not mistaken. But when you talk about power grids and all that, I bet you once the report comes out, it was someone from the inside. A disgruntled employee is more detrimental to your organization than anyone can be from outside. Reason being, that employee knows all the ins and outs and all the architecture and infrastructure of that organization. So to answer your question, those hacks was probably due to a long and a lot of reconnaissance work. Yes.
Thank you so much for your help. Thank you. That's all for me.
Thank you, SK. All right. Well, thank you everybody for the great questions that we had, and appreciate everybody joining us. Thank you, Dr. Byron Wallace, for your time and for the event today. So we're really happy to have you on behalf of CSNP, and wish everybody, we're done for the webinar. Wish everybody a great night, and be safe out there. All right. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you for having me.